Welcome to the Raw Coding YouTube channel. My name is Anton, and today we're going to be building a Json parser. Primarily for educational purposes, this is not going to be a serialization and deserialization from one type into JSON and back. This is more of a JSON document scenario where we have a blob of JSON, we parse it into a structure, which we can then manipulate in C#. If there are any features that you would like me to implement on top of this Json parser, leave a comment and find other comments with other features. Leave a like on those features, and if one gets more than 100 likes or something like that, I will implement that feature. As a side note, I am going to leave out some features from this Json parser to cut the video short. For example, like floating point parsing and things like handling Cyrillics and Chinese characters, etc. Please don't forget, if you're enjoying the video, leave a like and subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section. Again, about the features on top of this Json parser that I'm going to build. If you would like to see one of them, go into the comment section and like the feature that you want to see. Don't forget to check out the description. I've already built something like this during my live streams on Twitch, so go ahead, follow that. I have a C# course that is out. If you would like to know C# as I do it, I highly recommend you check it out. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Here I have a Json parser solution with a Json parser. This is going to contain the Json class, which is going to be doing the parsing. We're then going to have unit tests on the side to make sure that I'm not regressing and that we have some kind of plan that we're going against. Before we dive into writing any code, let's understand what we're trying to do from a high ground. We are going to have some kind of blob of JSON. The blob of JSON is essentially a big string. Another thing that a string is just a collection of characters. Okay, so these three things are essentially the same. So I'm putting a three-way equals here, all right? For the parser that we're going to have, what it wants to do is it wants to go from the first character and then traverse every single character in this array. As we're traversing the characters, we're going to keep some kind of track of what it is that we're going to try to parse. So for example, if we encounter an object, we're going to expect to have a key. After the key, we will have a colon, and then we're going to expect some kind of value. If the value starts with a double quote, it is going to be some kind of string. If the value starts with an N, we are going to expect to see null. All right. So as we see null from this first character N, we can say first thing is, okay, just advanced 4 characters forward. So instead of going character by character, we're just going to skip over to the new line or whatever it is going to be on the end, right? So this is \n, a very bastardized one, but you get it. Another thing that is happening here is we take this null and we save it into a token. So as we're traversing this collection over here, what we're doing is actually mapping it or aggregating it into a tree. Okay, so in the end, it is going to look something like this. All right, and what we are going to be returning is this root node or some kind of object that is going to be pointing to the root node, and then it is just going to be a very good interface to basically use to say, okay, I want to go to this property, I want to get this property, and I want to get the value in that property with trying to convert it to a Boolean or something like that. Okay. So that's the high plan. We started talking about null, so let's see what this is going to look like. So the first test is going to be parse null. We are going to take our Json parser. We're going to parse a value of null. This is valid JSON, by the way. We don't have a method, so let's go ahead and create a method in here. The null will just be some kind of JSON value. If we want to do this Uncle Bob's TDD style, we can have some kind of result. So var a result. This doesn't return anything just yet, so let's go ahead and return an object. And then we want to have an assertion that it is null, so result should be null. Coming back to the parse, JSON is going to contain null, and if we are really silly, we can just go ahead and return null over here. But let's not do this. We are going to have a for loop, and for JSON lengths, we're going to extract a character from JSON, I. If character, let's say, is N, the value, so result, we'll say from the beginning it is null. We should reset the result to null because that's what it is. And then we want to increment I by 4. So from the current position and this I over here, we're just going to get rid of it. We'll then continue because we are about to have other characters that we're looking at. Otherwise, let's go ahead and return the result. I do have nullables over here, so I'm going to put a question mark over there. Let's run the unit test, and the unit test is passing. Let's then copy this across. We'll say parse bool. For this, we can use a theory, going to be the expected result. Same thing over here, so false and false. First parameter is JSON, second parameter is expected. Let's take the JSON, parse it. The expected is actually a bool. The result we can assert of type or is type bool result. Let's say that this is value. And then we're going to assert equal expected and value. Close that window and run the tests here. We'll get a couple of failing tests, or should at least. And actually that's an infinite loop because we are not advancing the increment here in any way. So let's advance it. And hopefully by looking at this code, you can see that it's a little bit hard to read and there are things that we can do here, but I will save it for later in case people actually do want to see it. So if we are encountering t, we want to return true and increment by 4. If we're encountering f, this is going to be false and one more character, so incrementing by 5. The increment over here is actually a little bit suspicious. We can throw a new exception that says something like unknown character, okay? If what we're seeing is something like a space, there is no result to parse out of here and we can actually just increment the counter. If I open up the tests, let's go ahead and rerun them. Everything is passing and now let's move on to the numbers. So instead of parse bool, we will have parse number. This is going to be an integer. We are going to be parsing an integer. Let's say we'll begin with a 0, 1, something like 10. Let's incorporate some, I don't know, funny numbers. I am going to be excluding things like floating points, and we can put a couple of spaces over here to just say that it doesn't really matter. Same as before, let's open the test explorer, run all tests. We have the number tests failing, which is fine. So if we go over here and we put an if statement, and the character starts with a 1 or any other number, and we will have to repeat this a couple of times for all the different numbers, like 1 and 2, etc. And actually the easiest way to do this here is say is 0 or is 1 and so on and so forth. Now that we have something like this, what can happen is the number is not just a singular number, it is going to be multiple numbers in a row. We don't know how many numbers it is going to be in a row, and this object we would have to cast it, uncast it, etc. So one of the things that you can do here is say you will return some kind of integer, so parse number. You'll have string JSON. You will also have the position. Let's scroll down a little bit here. I'm going to grab this if statement as well. And while we're here, let's say the result is parse JSON. We pass it along. The position is I, we're not incrementing it, and this will have to be static. If we do want to increment it, we actually have to say how many things we have parsed over here. So let's return a tuple of integer. This is going to be the result, and this is going to be count. So how many counts have we advanced? Again, going super simple, you're going to have some kind of result. Tons of things that you can do to optimize this. However, I will leave it as, I don't know, as palpable as possible. We're gonna go for the length of JSON still. However, this time we're starting from the position that we have passed over here. All right. And this parse is actually parse number. Again, take the if statement, place it over here. I'll scroll up and again, grab this character, place this over here. As long as the character is what we expect it to be, we want to go ahead and append this character onto the result. As soon as we encounter a character that is not a number, we want to break for our terrible solution. And the thing that we're going to return is result length, is how many things have we parsed, so we can advance the cursor that many times. And then the actual result can be int parse the result. So coming back over here, we can take the result, say var, increment or count, and then the actual result or number. Take the result, assign the number to it, take the I, increment it by increment, semicolon on the end, come back to the tests, let's go ahead and run them. And so far everything is passing. Great. Now let's take a look at a string. So let's take the theory over here. I'll delete a couple of them because what I want to have is an escape string, let's say something like 1, and then the result should actually be just 1. This is the expected result string. Let's also verify the same thing here. This is going to parse string. Let's also say we want something like with a space 2 and a space after here, so we know that we are not skipping these spaces. And then one of the most interesting things I think will be actually having things like escaped quotes, right? So for our third case, 3, we're going to have another double escape with another escape of this quote. And the final result that we're going to be looking at is just with single escapes, okay? The space here on the end, I will actually remove it. Let's go to JSON. We can take this if statement here. If C is double quote, the rest can go. And we're going to take a similar approach. Instead of parse number, we are going to have parse word or parse string. Let's have parse string. Still the same result. If C is, however, double quote, that is when we want to break. All right. So let's take this, cut this out. We're going to break. Then for the actual result length, that is going to be what's contained within the double quotes. We are going to slap on +2 on that for the quotes that are around the actual string that we're parsing. And then the result, we don't want to parse. This is just going to be a string that we return. In the simplest scenario, we're just going to take whatever character is coming our way and append it to the string. In the edge case scenario where we have that backtick, or sorry, not backtick, the backslash, so I will have to escape it over here. We actually don't want the backslash itself. We want the character that comes after it. Let's just remove this if statement because the thing is shouting at me, right? We are just gonna skip past this character. So we will increment once. We're then gonna take whatever is in the next place, assign that, and then as we're passing along, we're gonna go past that character and grab the next one. So this is what we have here. Parse string, let's grab that, come back up here, place parse string, and the same thing except for the number, we will have a string. I'm going to use str. If you can't type string because it's a keyword, you can always do something like this, okay? But str is my preferred approach. With this, I think this actually should be fine. Let's go ahead and rerun all the tests. I should really learn the keybinds for rerunning all of the tests. We have a couple of tests failing. Looks like none of this has actually worked, and I think that's because, yeah. So character, whenever we're encountering the double quotes, we go in here and we start off with the same position of the double quote, all right? So we actually just want to advance once further as we're beginning our looping, all right? Let's rerun these tests. The escaped character test is failing, so what we've expected to be here isn't actually working. And that is because nobody will be able to tell you why. Let's put a breakpoint over here. We're going to run this test. We have the character space, so that is fine. We should be appending that. And there we have C set to the, not the backtick, sorry, the backslash. So we're advancing 1, and then the next thing that we're setting to the result is the actual quote. So then the next thing, if we skip past this, should be the T. I am quite confident this should be working as it is. Let's actually play this to the breakpoint over here. So let's remove the one here. There is 3 for the result. Play to the exception, and we exit. So the thing that I've managed to spot there is essentially as we are going past this increment over here, we're not actually appending it to the result. The result of length that we have over here doesn't actually match how many characters we have traversed. So what happens after it is we're probably, sorry, somewhere over here, we're just overriding the original string that we parsed. For this, swapping to something like a while loop would probably be the easiest solution. We have the position, we have the I. While I is less than length, we want to go ahead and increment I. We're going to be incrementing it every single time we're looping around. And then at the end, we can do something like I minus position, and probably +1 for the time that we're not going to increment it here. If we want, we can remove the +1 over here and actually just increment the I over here. All right. As a Scottish person would say, I rerun the tests and everything looks good now. So we have our 4 data types. And what we're really doing here is we're parsing a value. So the parse function over here parses a value. As soon as we get around to arrays, so we'll say parse array with same types or same values, and not array. And same value types will be maybe a little bit hard to represent with bool types, okay? This can be a fact. No parameters, and the JSON that we're going to be supplying is an array with things like true and false. The result should be an object array. We're then going to grab our assertion of type, is type, bool. We're not going to assert the length, hopefully we'll crash without it. So the first one is boolean, so b1 for boolean 1. We're going to assert that that is true, so b1, and then b2 is not going to be true. So let's actually grab this, put this here, remove that, one over here. If we jump into parse, we kind of want to zoom out now. This is not really parse, this is parse value. If I duplicate this, place this over here, our parse function should really try to understand, is it attempting to parse an object? Is it attempting to parse an array? Or is it attempting to parse a value? The result of parse value becomes something similar to how we used to parse our number in string. Because we want to parse a value and then we want to return whatever the counter was. Again, the integer is going to be the count, object is going to be the value. We will replace the for loop with a while loop. As soon as I remember how to type, take the I, place it outside, remove the semicolon, format everything, and there we go. I'll actually take this while loop or the beginning of it, place this over here and say something along the lines of, if the current character that we're looking at, so C, if it begins with an open square brace, that is where we want to again create another region where we parse a array. So this is an object array, and that's going to be the value. For both parse value and parse array, we will want the same integer position to pass into the functions. So let's go ahead and add that. Inside the if statement over here, again, we will employ the same tactic where we're parsing a number and then we're going to get an increment a and a number, or in our case, it is an array. This is going to be parse array. Internally, it is going to take care of things like skipping over spaces, commas, etc. Okay? Same way that this is actually going to take care of skipping over spaces. Okay? So if we have something along the lines of this, where we have a space over here, we can actually just skip over it and nothing is going to happen. So this can actually happen somewhere in the beginning maybe. Otherwise, as a fallback, we can parse value. This is going to be some kind of value. And an interesting point here is that maybe we don't actually need the increment over here. As soon as we encounter one of these characters, we know the rest of it is going to be the full thing. It's only once we encounter this recursive structure where we have an array or we have an object and there's objects or arrays within objects or within arrays, so on and so forth. We actually just kind of want to say, look, for whatever thing we get over here, just return the value, and we're going to do the same thing over here. Return value. Otherwise, we're gonna throw new exception, unknown or failed to parse JSON, maybe a new line and something like JSON. So we'll just spit out the thing that we failed to parse, okay? With this, we still have the parse array function to implement. So let's take this while loop over here, place it inside. The I is going to start from position +1. If we're encountering spaces within an array, we're just going to skip over them as soon as it's some kind of value. We actually want to parse it. In this case, we're not going to be using parse value, although we can. We're actually just going to go straight back to parse. And this is where this while loop actually makes sense here. And you actually want to return it. So what I will do is, again, I'll just copy this. Because again, I'm saying that I'm interested in this I number over here. Otherwise, not really. So let's introduce a for loop, place this over here, remove the I, and make this loop, not a comma here, not a semicolon here. The fail to parse JSON, we don't really need it. One too many spaces here, and this is going to be an internal parse. This function needs or should be private. This should return an integer, so how many counts has it traversed to try to parse whatever it is trying to parse. So let's say count here, and then the actual value over here. We'll take internal parse, and maybe it was a little bit of a moot point of changing this to a for loop. Kind of just want to pass the JSON over here, grab the value. One of the things that should go in here as a parameter is because we can be parsing any of these arrays or values or objects as a nested structure. So Json, here we're going to be starting from 0. And the point here is that we're actually discarding this number. All right. For the rest of the stuff, we actually want to take the increment and the value, or in our case here, it is going to be the array. The I starts from the position, and I think it's safe to actually just say we want to return by however much we have incremented or any white space that we have managed to leave out, and semicolon over here. The value, actually get rid of that there. I'll place the else statement over here, put this inside here. This here, that there, you know, not very good descriptive words. Let's take this parse value, place it above, and we're gonna again have this increment and then the actual value. Do the same return, take the val, place it over there, and format the code. I think that is about it. So while we're traversing inside the array, we're skipping all the spaces. If it is not a space, we actually want to use the internal parse. So internal parse, we pass along the JSON, we pass along the I. This is going to give us some kind of increment, some kind of value that we have managed to parse. There is going to be a result, so an object array, and it would actually be very useful to know how big the object array is going to be, but I'm not going to know that. So the result is going to be a list to begin with. We'll take the result, we're going to add value. It does want these objects to be nullable, just in case, and then by the end, a result to array. And of course, this is a tuple where in the beginning, we did have the position with whatever I, so I minus position. Then we have the comma. The object array here can be nullable. The I incrementation should happen right over here. And then we loop around. If there is a comma, we just want to loop around. Because these two look very similar, we can essentially treat space and commas identical. So something like this. If the character is an actual closing brace, that is when we want to exit. Let's take a look. There is one more error. Just jumping down here, I want to see what's happening. And that is because we actually changed the parse value with these counters. So we have the position over here. Let's again set it initially to the I. Again, same thing for the return result. We're gonna have I minus position, that is how much we have traversed. We then have the result, and I think that actually looks okay. Let's go ahead and rerun the tests. Let's see what failed. We have an exception. The exception has been thrown at unknown character, and maybe somewhere over here. So we have true, false. First, we went into parse, into internal parse. We tried to parse the array, which is correct. We then tried to use internal parse again, and internal parse went into parse value, which to me sounds correct again. And then the character was unknown at that point. Okay, so perhaps it is when we are going into the internal parse, again, something is happening with regards to this square brace. We're encountering the square brace, we're passing down the position as if we're still at the square brace, all right? Maybe what we want to do is we actually want to increment, yeah, we have consumed this character. And perhaps it is going to be a smart idea that whenever we're doing this incrementation, just do it straight after we have consumed that character. Let's scroll down to the array. We're gonna try to do the same thing over here with what we just learned. Maybe even combine it like so. Come back over here, do the same thing here. I know cleaning up this code because it's a very procedural, it's a steaming hot pile of shit anyway, right? For the numbers, we don't want to do it. For the characters, we actually might want to do it. If we come back down here, for the parse string, maybe we no longer need to add this additional one over there. Okay, let's come back over here, rerun the tests. Still one test failing, or actually all tests failing now. So did end up regressing all the way to the oblivion. Let's actually undo all of these changes, and we're just gonna do it for the initial brace, right? So where I was gonna place it over here. Time travel all the way back. When we encounter this brace, that's the only time we want to increment. So when we go into parse array, that is specifically where we start to look for, okay, if it's not this brace, we're gonna try end up parsing a value, hopefully. Okay, rerun the tests. Still failing at unknown character when we're trying to parse value. So for the unknown character, we can actually place a breakpoint over here, debug the test, and quickly take a look at it. And we're actually looking at character R. So however we're traversing, what's happening is we're incrementing things a little bit too much, which I thought wasn't actually a problem. So let's take a look at this. If we're looking at an array, we're reading in a character, it is not going to be empty, so we don't increment anything. Let's say we increment once here because we are seeing a square brace. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove this from here. I'm gonna go into parse array, and because in parse array we have the +1 here. Okay, so I will leave it at that because we have the same thing for the string. I'm gonna rerun this, and this is still going to be an unknown character. I'm gonna debug it, something that I should have probably done in the beginning when I encountered this error. And we're again gonna take a look at this state. So this time what we're looking at is a comma, something that we should have skipped past. I have a feeling it is because the, let's say, internal parse, when we are parsing the value should come back to the array. We take the value, we add it, we increment, and then this should definitely go over. So let's place a breakpoint over here after internal parse. We're going to debug this again. And we're not reaching the breakpoint, which basically means we never exit this function, which is actually understandable. In all of these statements, we have continue where really we want to break. Once we have gotten our token, let's say, we just want to exit, right? So in all of these places, let's go ahead and break instead of continuing. I'm going to come back. I'm just going to rerun this test. And I think at this point, it should pass, although true, false. This should be parsing as false, so that's just a wrong test. Let's rerun everything, and looks like everything working. Okay, let's do the same for other types. So let's say number types. We're gonna say 1, 69, and 420. One space in between here and here and here, just to make sure that they don't actually matter. Now let's say equal and equal. 69, one over here as well. 420 over here. I'll say that this is 2. All of these values should be integers. Let's go ahead and run this test. 100% wasn't happy with that. So it actually managed to parse the first and the second, but not the last value, which seems a little bit odd to me. So let me put a little breakpoint over here. Just double check that the things that we're passing, or that the formatting of the output isn't actually messed up. So let me step 1, remove this breakpoint, play. Taking a look at the value, so 169 and 420, we are failing to parse 420. How do you debug something like this? So let's come back. We're gonna go to parse array. I'm gonna place a breakpoint right over here. I'm gonna debug this test just as it were like a minute ago. So we're currently looking at character 1. Understandable, everything works over here. So if I just go past this, we're gonna be, or we were looking at character 6. The current I is at 6, and incrementation actually went up to 8. So when I increment this, the I is actually gonna go overflow and we're gonna miss 420. Okay, so something is wrong with calculating the actual number in the parse integer. So let's see this. All of these i's will start from the position. When we're returning over here, we are subtracting I from the position, and this looks all fairly standard. For the parse number, just double checking that nothing is messed up over here, we set the result, we set how much we want to increment by. We're doing this by the result here, and to be fair, thinking about this now, we're doing this silly breaking over here for how much things we have actually managed to parse, we could probably just go ahead and do something like return however much you need to increment, okay? So this can actually be a return statement. Same return statement over here. Get rid of this. The space can skip no problem, and I would actually rather put this somewhere at the beginning over here. For the n or null, let's return 4 and null. Get rid of all of this stuff. For the result here, again, 4 and true. Get rid of this stuff. For the false, return 5 and false. Looks good to me. And for the rest, I mean, this is going to throw, but yeah, as soon as we encounter a token that we actually recognize in any of these positions, we should actually be all right. The bit over here, I'm not actually sure how we're going to reach this, so I'm just going to throw another exception over there. Okay, with that, hopefully the numbers should look a little bit better. Let's open up all the tests and run them again. The one test is still failing, so let's debug it. So on the first one, everything is fine, and on the second one, again, we're incrementing a little bit too much. So on the internal parse, the amount that we're incrementing should actually not have to do anything with that, and not anything with this either. So complete mistake by me. Let's just return however much we should increment from here. I think that should be fine then. Let's stop this test, rerun all of these, and it looks like everything is passing. Cool, let's come back to the test. We are gonna do some strings now. So again, 1, 2, 3, where the 3 is going to be looking a little bit funky with string types. Amend all of the assertions, rerun the tests. And it looks like we do have an unknown character somewhere over here where we're trying to parse a value. From looking at this, I can confidently say that whenever we're parsing a value, we don't actually expect it to start with backticks. And actually, I don't think this is valid JSON. So if this is a string, this is a string, this string should actually be enclosed within quotes, right? Otherwise, a string value cannot start with a backslash, all right? Let's place this over here, no spaces in between the outer quotes. Again, bring up the tests, rerun. Cool, and it all looks fine. Let's do a dynamic array. So dynamic, probably leave the types, remove everything from there. We'll start with null, 1, false, and then the one over there. Copy this one time. Picks up all of the assertions. First is null, the second one is 1, then we make sure it's false, and the last one is equal to 1. Run this, and it looks good. So let me just run the whole thing. One more test to do is parse array with nested. We can do first as dynamic, and then 1, 2, 3, or maybe even false and 1. The kind of same tests, but in a nested array right over there. Okay, the value, I am going to override it right over here. So the second is object array again, semicolon on the end, change the indexes to be 0, 1, and 2. Run this test. Well, looks like everything is working out, so I am confident it is working. We have the array functionality, I think, finished at this point. We basically then want to move on to the objects, right? So the objects is the thing that is kind of, well, parse array, we kind of just, let's copy this, place this over here. We want to parse an object. For most of the stuff in the middle, let's get rid of it, and we're kind of gonna start anew. The things that we have over here and the value that we're going to return is actually going to be a dictionary from string, so some kind of key, and this may return an object that is going to be null. I'm not sure why it was giving me a big string over there. This barely fits on my screen, all right, but I'm zoomed in like into oblivion, so hopefully shouldn't affect you. The result is going to be this dictionary. I will just return the result over here, and we're gonna do things such as inside the internal parse. If we're starting with a curly brace, we are going to parse object, right? Nice, super simple. Starting from position 1, we're going to skip the initial curly brace. If we are facing like something like a space, let's increment and continue, right? So a space we don't really care about. If what we're facing is going to be a quote, then things start to get a little bit interesting. We actually just want to go ahead and parse a string. We're gonna pass the JSON, we're going to pass the position, or rather the I. One thing to remember is that internally it's going to position itself on the right side of this bit or this quote. We're gonna get back an inc with a key, so this is going to be the property key. This function did end up being public. I'm just gonna mark it as private. And here, hopefully you can see how now we want to look for a colon and we want to look for another value until we reach a comma or we reach something like a closing brace, okay? So we're looking for all of these characters. Maybe what's going to be a little bit easier is to have an additional method that is going to say parse object property. So at this position, we're gonna have a property. We shouldn't have any spaces. We're going to start off with parse string, okay? Here, we're gonna say we are expecting to give out a key, and we're going to expect to give out a value. So var inc, a little bit of space here, key and value from parse object property. Pass the JSON, the position. We want to increment by yay much. The result key should have the value. And then maybe we need to continue, maybe not. Other things that we may encounter, if we have a comma after that, we don't really care about it. Or let's say we have something like a new line, but we don't really care about that either. What we really care about is if we have a closing brace. If we have a closing brace, then that means we should be breaking out, because that's where the object completes. For the parse string over here, when we were getting around to the property, please remember that we are already looking at the double quote, okay? And this is going to go past the double quote. Once we have this, we're going to take the I, we're going to append the incrementation, we're gonna hold on to the key. If we ever exit this loop, this should really be an exception. So I just don't want to rewrite it, so I'm just gonna throw this here. And at the end, what I'm gonna return is I minus position, key, and then the value, which is currently missing. I will then have another while loop over here, where I'm going to check, while whatever character it is that I'm looking at doesn't equal colon, all I'm trying to do is get over on the other side. I actually just want to increment it. So I'm just going to keep incrementing it. As soon as it is colon, after it, I can increment it again. I know this looks a little bit silly, but we're really just using our raw thoughts to make up this solution. Incrementation, we're going to have a collision over here, because this is going to be the value, and because we can have nested objects. This is going to be parsing an object, so this is going to be value inc, and this is going to be key inc. Key inc, we're going to increment it here. Value inc, we are going to increment it here. Let's remove the spaces here, and I think that should actually be fine. The result doesn't matter. The character that we have been looking at here doesn't really matter. Perhaps the while loop over here also doesn't matter, and the throw doesn't matter here either. If we fail to do something in this scenario, hopefully things are going to be evident. So again, we're encountering this quote, we're going into the parse object, and the +1 over here shouldn't really be here because the parse string is going to be going in there. And we actually have the I over here, and yeah, that is fine. That is basically how we keep track of how far along we have traveled. Maybe what we want to do, and this is again up to you, is if you have a position, you can actually just return up to where you went, and all you're doing is just you are, I don't know, wherever we're doing the incrementations, you don't do an incrementation, you just reassign the number. So anyway, we did all of that. Let's just make sure whatever we have still works. Perfect. I don't look like a complete imbecile. Let's take this, place this over here. We're gonna say parse object. Let's remove this. We're gonna place a parse. This is going to be a dictionary of string object. No array over here. This is going to be a value. And we will assert equal. Maybe was there 0 for these? 0 or empty value, right? So this is just going to be empty. Parse, and we'll actually call it like that as well. So empty object. Let's run this, and there we go. Okay, perfect. I'm actually surprised that works. So parse, we will say flat object, where the JSON, I will have to get a little bit more creative with this, right? We might do something a little bit like this, like that. Remove the quotes, give it a little bit of space. Actually zoom in so people can see. I'll take the JSON, place this over here, and this is now not empty. Take the assert, this is going to be null value at position A, or rather at key A. This is then going to be true at key B. This is then going to be equal to 360 at key C, right over here. And we can also assert is type and say that this is a Boolean. The final thing is going to be no scope in position D. All right, flat object, let's see how this handles. Maybe some of the assertions are going to fail. It definitely looks like an infinite loop. So maybe it was the comma or the trailing comma, though I thought I said to ignore it. I am working with very little real estate here. Let's try this. No trailing comma for a single property. If that still doesn't work, then we will actually have to go and take a look at some of the loops that we have. So into parse object, we want to go into the internal parse. We are going to encounter our opening curly brace. We're gonna go past it. So we're somewhere over here. We then may have a space, we may have a new line, and every single time we have something like this, we are just crawling past it. Maybe we are. So then at some point we're going to encounter this thing right here. We will then want to parse object property at this position. We're going to parse a string, we're going to advance some more and some more. We're then gonna finally parse an object. We're gonna move across the correct amount, and then we're gonna return stuff. I'm seeing this loop. I don't think the infinite loop can actually be here because at some point we're gonna run out of the index of the array. This loop is in a similar scenario unless we're actually encountering some kind of character that isn't matching any of these, and we're then somewhere in the astral or the ether of this, right? I'm actually curious, what could that character be? Let's head on over here. Let's debug, and this is when we're parsing object, okay? So we're currently at the first new line. We then have a bunch of empty spaces or empty characters, and I'm hoping, okay, no. So for a second there, I was thinking that the spaces over here were looking just like empty characters or no character at all. So I was thinking that's how it got stuck there, but never mind. So here I am hoping it goes over to parse object property. We're then gonna jump over, and interesting that we're looking at n as a position. So the first property has failed us. Okay, so the only ends that we have over here is this n and this n. We have removed all of the properties, so this n is really the culprit. So what I'm thinking is somewhere after here we're not incrementing things correctly. So potentially we might want to take a look at this area where we're parsing the object property. I'm expecting this parse object. Okay, so parse object isn't actually okay because it can be an object, or it can be an array, or it can be something else. So what should be here is actually internal parse and actual internal parse. And yeah, now it's actually flagging this up as nullable. So yeah, object nullable. I think that should actually be okay. Is my debugger still running? And no, it's not. Let's rerun the test. I think that should actually fix it. Spoken too soon. Looks like we still have the infinite loop. Let's debug this again. And actually, let's go into this JSON parser again. What I want to do, okay, I have a breaking point right over there with my debugging menu. Sorry if this is jumping about a little bit too much. We are currently, let's skip past this, past. So the first double quote, we have now managed to parse something. The key that we're parsing is \n and the value is null, okay? So understandable. First of all, we're passing the wrong position here, so just the initial one. It's definitely not something that we want to be doing. We want to be passing I. So right off the bat, having two parameters for where we've been and where we're going is already kind of like, let's stop this. And before I rerun the test again, I just want to double check that I'm not doing the same mistake over here. Doesn't look like I am. All right, let's rerun. Another infinite loop. Definitely do something along the lines of this, where we'll come back down here. I'll say continue, and then throw exception and unknown token, and then we can actually output the actual token we're looking at. All right, smart. Make sure that we have a new exception. Quickly see if we can get a good enough output. Unknown token L. So where is it grabbing L from? Somewhere from null, somewhere over here. Okay, interesting. I think I know with this one. Again, this is all gonna come down to this whole I malarkey. When we are parsing all of these objects, again, it kind of just annihilates this I. Whenever we're walking over any spaces or anything like that, just kind of erases all of that information. So if we have our object over here and we have managed to pass some kind of distance, we want to return I minus position, so whatever other distance we have managed to pass plus increment, and then the final object. Okay, what are you gonna do? We're gonna have an array over here, return an array, and then the same thing here, the_inc, and then value equals same thing here, except we'll have the_inc. And in case you're wondering why the_inc, that's because otherwise we get variable collision. All right, so that's the first place where I was making that mistake. The other place definitely wasn't there, not here either. Parse array, appending everything here. This bit I feel like, yeah, so same mistake. So I position, let's go ahead, grab it, place this over here, let's say var inc number equals same thing, return plus inc number, same for the string, so inc str, return str, or sorry, that was inc and string. Talking like a robot there, beep boop bop. Let's give this a go. So I'm just gonna run all tests here, and actually all of them just passed there. So okay, so as long as we manage to correctly track how many characters we have traveled, and I'll be honest, the whole static function, this is like procedural programming 101, no objects, no global state, just a local state. This is horrible. I'm fully aware of this solution. I'm gonna try to make iterations on this to highlight actual programming paradigms. So we're gonna be rewriting this solution. Parse nested object. So let's say we will have these properties, and then in B, there we go. So now for the assertions. So after extracting the original dictionary, we just re-extract another dictionary with similar values and just run that assertion. So with nested objects, let's give that a go. Looks like that is passing. Now we want to say with nested object and arrays. Here I will take this property. Again, I'm just going to assign this to be something along the lines of this. Tried my best at indenting it, so this should still be null. The B that we're grabbing, everything should be identical except the last B over here. What I'm gonna be grabbing here is going to be an array. So this is an object array. remove the true. The very first value in the array should be an object, so just this dictionary, and again the properties should all be identical. So I think this is more or less the last test that should be ran over here, and of course we get a little bit of an exception. Specifically, the exception is right over here for the value that we're trying to parse. An unknown character, let's at least see what kind of character we're trying to parse, and I'll be honest, the best error that seems at this point is actually spitting out a substring from the beginning for length of I, let's say +1, and then we can see actually how long we have managed to get, or how far. So inside the array, that is where we failed. So what we do is we go to parse array. Let's go into there. And one of the things is we haven't accounted for the fact that arrays could be multi-line, okay? Let's slap the new line in there that we can actually traverse it, and now all of the tests are passing. Cool. So let's rerun all of the tests again. Everything is passing, and I think that is pretty much it. So a couple of things that we're missing over here is when I talked about having this token tree, we don't really have a token tree. We are just kind of saying, okay, return this object, and the object is the token, but inside of there, there may be a string or there may be a null. So we don't really have our structure for the tokens. Another thing that we don't have is, again, because we're lacking the tokens, is this interface. We're kind of just saying get a thing, cast it, and so on and so forth. We are assembling a nested structure, we're just missing the actual data types from it. So the approach that we took here, or not specifically on purpose, is a procedural approach, which is just static functions. Now you can take a functional approach where there is a lot less state and a lot less mutations, and I think one of the episodes that I'm going to make in the future is going to be around turning this into a functional solution. Nevertheless, that will be it for this video. A little bit on the longer side. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video, how to build a custom JSON parser from scratch. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section. If you would like me to add any specific features that you would like to see how they fit into this solution, go ahead, drop a comment and leave a like on that comment if you see a feature that you want to see get implemented. Again, I will be rewriting this in a more functional way, maybe even an object-oriented way, although I don't think it is a good fit. Don't forget to join the Discord server. Don't forget to follow me on Twitch. That is where I practice this sort of stuff. If you would like the source code for this video as well as my other videos, come join me on Patreon. I will really appreciate it, and a very big and special thank you to all of my current Patreon supporters. You help me make these videos. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good day.